My mother looked me straight in the eye, on my birthday, in front of my brother and his wife, and said the words I never thought a mother could say to her own child. "You are useless. You have always been useless, and you will die useless." She said it with a small smile on her face, like she was proud of the sentence, like she had been saving it for years and finally found the perfect moment to use it. What she did not know, what none of them knew, was that the house we were all sitting in, the house with her favorite armchair and my brother's expensive shoes lined up by the door, belonged to me. Every wall, every tile, every inch of that living room was mine. And I hadn't said a single word about it in 3 years. Hey everyone, welcome back to Silent Family Stories. If this is your first time here, we tell real, grounded stories about families, about the quiet wars that happen behind closed doors, the kind of moments most people never talk about, but almost everyone has lived through in some form. If that sounds like something you need right now, go ahead and hit subscribe, because we've got a lot more of these coming, and I promise you, this one is going to sit with you long after it ends. All right, let's get into it. My name doesn't matter for this story, so let's just call me the middle child. That's what I was, in every sense of the word. Not the oldest, so I never got the credit for being responsible. Not the youngest, so I never got the sympathy for being fragile. Just the one in the middle, the one who got compared to both siblings depending on which comparison made me look worse that day. Growing up, my older brother was the golden one. Good grades, good looks, the kind of charm that made teachers forgive his mistakes, and relatives brag about him at every family gathering. My younger sister was the baby, and in our house, the baby could do no wrong. She cried, she got what she wanted. She struggled, someone stepped in. Me, I was somewhere in the middle of all that attention, quietly learning that if I wanted anything in life, I would have to get it myself, because nobody was going to hand it to me. I want to be clear about something before I go further. I'm not telling you this story to make you hate my mother. Families are complicated, and most of the time, the people who hurt us the most are not evil. They're just wounded in their own ways, repeating patterns they never healed from. But understanding someone doesn't mean you have to keep absorbing their pain forever. And that's really what this story is about. By the time I was 22, I had moved out. Not dramatically, not with slammed doors or screaming matches. I just quietly packed my things one weekend and left. I got a small apartment, took a job that barely covered rent, and started building something that was entirely mine for the first time in my life. My mother didn't call for weeks after that. When she finally did, it wasn't to ask how I was doing. It was to tell me that leaving home was selfish, that a good child stays close to their parents, that I was already proving her right about who I was. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I think a lot of you watching this know exactly what that feels like. That moment when you try to build something for yourself, and instead of support, you get told that wanting more for your life is somehow a character flaw. For the next few years I worked. I really worked. 2 jobs at one point, cutting every corner I could, eating the same 3 meals on rotation because they were cheap, saying no to almost every invitation that cost money I didn't have. My friends were out living their 20s, and I was sitting in a tiny room doing freelance work at midnight because that's when I could actually focus. It wasn't glamorous. There's no dramatic music playing in real life when you're grinding through years like that. It's just quiet, exhausting, repetitive effort, day after day, with no guarantee it will ever amount to anything. But slowly, it did amount to something. I won't get into every detail of how, because that's not really the point of this story, but let's just say that patience, consistency, and a lot of financial discipline started to pay off. By the time I was 28, I had saved enough, and with some smart decisions along the way, I was able to buy a house outright. Not a mansion, not some show-off property, just a solid, comfortable family home in a good neighborhood, the kind of house that takes most people a lifetime of mortgage payments to own free and clear. Here's the part that I think will surprise you. I didn't tell my family. I know how that sounds. You're probably wondering why someone would keep something that big a secret from their own parents and siblings. And honestly, I've asked myself that question too, many times, especially in the quieter moments. But I think, somewhere deep down, I already knew what would happen if I told them. I knew my mother's first reaction wouldn't be pride. It would be questions about how I could afford it, comparisons to my brother, maybe even a demand disguised as a suggestion that I should let them move in, or help pay for something, or somehow make the achievement about everyone except me. So I stayed quiet. I let them believe I was still renting a small apartment across town, still struggling the way they assumed I always would be. Around that time, my parents' financial situation started falling apart. My father's small business had been struggling for a couple of years, and eventually they had to sell their home. I remember the phone call. My mother's voice was different that day, smaller somehow, though she tried to cover it with irritation instead of vulnerability, because that was always her way of avoiding feeling weak. She said they would probably need to rent somewhere modest for a while until things stabilized. My brother, being the golden child that he was, immediately offered his place. He had a decent apartment with his wife, and there was a spare room. It made sense on paper. But within a few months, tension started building in that apartment the way it always does, when three adults with different habits and different expectations try to share one space that wasn't built for that many people. That's when my mother started calling me more often. Not to check in, not to reconnect, but slowly, carefully, to feel out whether I might be in a position to help. She never asked directly. She would say things like, "It must be nice living alone, no one to answer to." Or, "I bet your apartment is peaceful, not like this madhouse here." I would just listen, give short answers, and let her think whatever she wanted to think. Eventually, my sister suggested something to my mother that none of them expected me to actually agree to. She said, "Why don't we all just have a birthday dinner for you at my place, and we'll figure out the living situation while we're all together?" My mother liked that idea, not because she wanted to see me. I think, if I'm being completely honest, she wanted an audience. She wanted witnesses for whatever plan she had already decided on in her head. So the date was set. My birthday. I remember thinking it was strange that my own birthday had somehow become the backdrop for a family meeting about housing logistics, but by that point in my life, I had stopped expecting my birthday to be about me. It had been that way for as long as I could remember. Now here's where the story takes the turn that I think most of you are waiting for. A few weeks before that dinner, my sister called me, sounding stressed. Her apartment building had some maintenance issues, water damage in one of the walls, and she needed to have people over sooner than planned while repairs were being sorted out. She asked, almost as a last resort, if we could just have the birthday dinner at my place instead, since apparently my apartment was probably bigger anyway. I hadn't planned on revealing anything that night. But sitting there on the phone, I realized I had a choice to make. I could keep making excuses, keep protecting the secret a little longer, or I could just let it happen naturally, let them come to me, let them see for themselves instead of me having to explain anything. So I said yes. The night of the dinner, I remember standing in my kitchen, listening to car doors closing outside, hearing my mother's voice already complaining about something in the driveway before she had even reached the front door. When she walked in, she paused for a second, just a small pause, taking in the space, the furniture, the size of the living room. But then, almost as if she had decided not to acknowledge anything unusual, she brushed past it and sat down in the armchair near the window, the one that happened to be the most comfortable seat in the house. Dinner went the way most of our family dinners went. Small talk that felt more like a performance than a conversation. My brother talking about his promotion, my sister mentioning some new certification she was working toward, and me, mostly quiet, mostly listening, the way I had learned to be over the years. Then it happened. My mother, maybe 2 glasses of wine into the evening, looked over at me with that same tired disappointment she always seemed to carry when she looked in my direction, and she said it. "You are useless. You have always been useless. And you will die useless." She laughed a little afterward like it was a joke, but everyone at that table knew it wasn't. My brother looked down at his plate. My sister shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Nobody defended me. Nobody ever really did. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. At least not there. I just sat there for a moment, feeling that old familiar weight settle back onto my chest, the same weight I had been carrying since childhood, the one I thought maybe, just maybe, had gotten a little lighter over the years. And then I said something I hadn't planned on saying. I asked her calmly, "Mom, do you like this house?" She looked confused by the question, glancing around like she hadn't really thought about it before. "It's fine," she said. "A bit big for one person, but fine." I told her it was mine. Not rented, not borrowed. Mine, fully paid for, bought with money I had saved over years of working myself to exhaustion while everyone assumed I was barely getting by. The room went quiet in a way I don't think I can fully describe. My sister's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. My brother's jaw tightened slightly, the way it always did when something threatened the image he had built of himself as the successful one. And my mother, for the first time in my entire life, didn't have an immediate response. I want to pause the story here for a second, because I think this moment deserves it. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong for the sake of winning an argument. It wasn't some dramatic mic drop moment meant to humiliate my mother in front of everyone. If anything, revealing it in that moment felt less like triumph and more like exhaustion finally reaching its limit. Sometimes the truth doesn't come out because you want to prove a point. It comes out because you simply can't hold the weight of hiding it anymore. My mother eventually broke the silence by asking why I never told them. And that question, more than anything else that night, is what I want to talk to you about, because I think her question revealed something she never intended to reveal about herself. I told her the truth. I said I didn't tell them because I was afraid of exactly what almost happened that night. A demand disguised as a favor. An expectation that my success existed to serve everyone else's comfort rather than my own. I told her that for years, whatever I built for myself somehow always seemed to become communal property the moment anyone else needed it, while my own struggles were treated as personal failures I had to solve alone. She didn't have much to say after that. Not because she agreed necessarily, but I think for the first time, she didn't know how to twist the situation into something that made me the problem again. If you're still with me here, and I really hope you are, because this next part matters, let me tell you what happened after that dinner. Because life rarely wraps up in one dramatic conversation the way it does in movies. My mother didn't move in with me that night, and honestly, she never did. Something shifted in her after that dinner, not into warmth exactly, but into a kind of careful distance, like she finally understood there was a version of me she had never bothered to actually see. My parents eventually found a small rental of their own, modest but manageable, and slowly rebuilt some stability on their own terms. My relationship with my mother today isn't some beautiful redemption story. I wish I could tell you that everything healed perfectly, that she apologized with tears in her eyes and we hugged it out and everything was fixed. Real life is rarely that clean. What I can tell you is that she stopped saying that word to me. Useless. She hasn't said it since that night. And for me, that alone was worth more than any apology could have been. I think what I've learned from all of this, and what I hope some of you take away from this story too, is that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes silence is the quiet, patient work of building something for yourself while everyone around you is busy underestimating you. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to argue with the people who doubt you. It's to simply keep going, keep building, keep working, until the truth speaks for itself. If this story hit close to home for you, if you've ever been the quiet one in your family, the one who got overlooked or underestimated, I really want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me, was there a moment in your life where you finally proved something to yourself, even if no one else ever fully understood it? I read every single comment on these stories, and honestly, some of your stories in the comment section end up hitting even harder than the ones I tell here. And if you know someone who needs to hear a story like this today, someone who's quietly working hard while feeling invisible in their own family, go ahead and share this video with them. Sometimes the smallest reminder that someone sees your effort can mean more than you realize. Before we wrap up, I want to say one more thing, and I mean this sincerely. If you're someone out there who has been called useless, lazy, a disappointment, or any version of those words by people who were supposed to love and support you, I want you to know that those words are not the truth about who you are. They're a reflection of someone else's pain, someone else's unresolved bitterness, someone else's inability to see you clearly. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone through grand gestures or dramatic reveals. Sometimes just continuing to show up for yourself, quietly and consistently, is the most powerful answer you can ever give. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, and if you want more real, honest stories like this one, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. Leave a comment, share it with someone who needs it, and I'll see you in the next story. Take care of yourselves, and take care of the people who actually see your worth.